everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going through a way that you can improve your drawings really quickly and easily. So whilst I'm talking about this, I am going to be doing a study in the background from start to finish. I'm going to be drawing a peach still life study using charcoal pencils. All of the materials that I am using for this study will be listed in the description if you're interested in seeing what I used to create this drawing. I don't use too many supplies, but let's get into the video. And so I'm going to be talking about how you can improve your values in your drawing and make them more accurate. So I definitely think that this is one of the biggest reasons why your drawings may not be looking the way you want them to, is because your values may not be accurate. And value just basically means how light or dark something is. So how light or dark your shading is. And you need to have a range of lights and darks in your drawing to really make it stand out and pop and to look realistic or to really look three-dimensional. Okay, so I'm going to start off by going through 3 reasons why having the correct values in your drawings are so important and why it makes such a big difference to the final result of your drawing. So number 1, if you have incorrect values, that can cause your drawings to look really flat, especially when your drawing lacks contrast. And for those of you that don't know, contrast is the range between your lightest value and your darkest value. So if there isn't much difference between your highlights and your shadows, then you won't have much contrast in your drawing, and therefore it can look flat. And you'll know your drawing looks flat if it doesn't really stand out from a distance, if it doesn't pop out of the page. So when you think about contrast, think about how much is your drawing popping out of the page, how 3D does it look? And if it doesn't really pop out the page, it probably means that you haven't got a large range of values in your drawing and you need to revisit that and tweak some things. So that is the first reason why having correct values is so important. Secondly, shadows and highlights create depth in your work, and you really want to have depth. So again, it stands out and it looks realistic, if realism is what you're going for. And so if you have weak values, that will stop your work from popping out of the page like I just said. And finally, values are important. They are more important than most people think. A lot of people seem to think that to make your drawings better, you just need to add more details, especially if you're drawing in a realistic style. Whereas most of the time, that is not the case. The biggest reason why your drawings probably aren't looking super realistic is because your values are incorrect. They might be in the wrong place. You might have certain areas too dark or too light, or the values between different areas, the relationship of your values might be completely wrong. But I'll be talking through some tips on how you can improve your values in a second. So those are 3 reasons why having the correct values is so important when it comes to drawing. Now I'm going to go through some tips for creating accurate values in your drawings, and I'm going to be going through 3 stages. So I'm going to give you some tips for preparing for your drawing, then some tips on how to check your values whilst you're drawing, and then I'm also going to answer some questions that you guys asked on Instagram about getting accurate values. So when it comes to preparation, you want to make sure that if you're using a reference, and say you're using charcoal or graphite, which is a black and white medium, and if you're drawing in grayscale, but you have a reference image that is in color, you'll want to make sure that you convert your reference image that's in color, you want to convert that to black and white. It will make it so much easier to judge your values if they are all in grayscale, like what you will be drawing in. So make sure that if you're using charcoal or graphite, that you convert your reference to be black and white. It may sound very simple, but that will make a massive difference in analyzing your values when it comes to you picking what shade of graphite or charcoal to use. The second thing that you can do is, if you're drawing in coloured pencil, it can be really helpful if you also have a black and white copy of your reference image, and you can use your laptop, your phone or whatever just to add a black and white filter on top of that photo. And it's useful when it comes to coloured pencil drawings, even though you're drawing in colour. If you have, say, a green and a blue, or a red and a brown, and you're trying to compare them and see which value is darker, it's hard when they are two completely different colors. Whereas if you have a black and white version of your reference, you can judge and analyze those same colors in black and white and judge whether the green or the blue is darker, or whatever colors you're judging. So no matter what medium you're using, I definitely feel that having a black and white image of your reference is very important when it comes to analyzing your values. And finally, one thing that you can do to prepare is you can create a value scale. So you don't have to spend too long on this. If you're using graphite, you can just create a swatch of all of the different grades of graphite pencils that you have, from say your 2H pencil, your lightest pencil, all the way to your 8B, so that you can see the range of values you have in your graphite set, your charcoal set, whatever you are using. And then if you print off your reference, that would be really handy, and you have your black and white reference, and then you can use your value scale that you've created and see which color matches better, which shade of graphite, and then you'll know which pencil to use, and that's a great way to get accurate looking values. Before I move on to some tips for getting accurate values and checking your values whilst you're drawing, if you want to see how I created this peach study in real time and follow along with me and learn all of the tips for creating realistic values in real time, then this tutorial, along with hundreds of others, are available over on my Patreon for just a small amount per month. I've just launched a new website where you can see all of the tutorials I have on Patreon before you join, before you could become a patron. I'll leave a link to that in the description, and I've got tutorials on there for charcoal, coloured pencil. I've got lots of coloured pencil tutorials on there, watercolour, and lots of other mediums. But if a monthly membership isn't right for you, or you're just interested in learning one medium, then over on my website I've got lots of individual courses that will help you learn all of the techniques that you need to master the specific medium that you're interested in. For each tutorial, they are all voice narrated, and you'll also get the sketch outline, reference image, and materials list that you need to follow along with the tutorial. My courses are just a one-off payment, and then you get to keep the course for as long as you want. You can rewatch the tutorials for as long as you want. There is no expiry to my courses. And if you are interested in my courses, you can currently get 15% off if you use the code SAVE15 at checkout. So I'll leave a link to my course website and to my Patreon in the description below. Now let's get back into the video. So most people have trouble when it comes to the shadows, when it comes to getting in those darker values. Highlights don't tend to be a real problem for people. I've never seen, when I've critiqued people's work, that they don't have in the highlights. It's more that their shadows are a bit weak. They don't really get them dark and intense enough. So you want to make sure that you go in with those darker pencils to really make those shadows dark and intense. The way I like to do it is I actually like to go in with my darkest values first, as this can really remove the fear, as you don't have to worry about ruining your drawing because you wouldn't have made any progress yet. So if you go in first with your darkest charcoal or graphite pencil and establish the darkest shadows, that can really help you judge all of the other values as well. And especially when I'm doing charcoal studies, this is my technique that I go through no matter what I'm drawing. I always go in with my 2B charcoal pencil first and get in the darkest areas for each part of my drawing, and I found that this really has helped me, and I hope that it helps you guys too. Also, use a range of values. Don't feel like you can just use one pencil for the whole drawing. Increasing the range of pencils that you have available and the grades can really help to make your drawing pop more, because you can utilize a larger range of that value scale. So I don't use too many. I only have 2 pencils and a charcoal block, and I found that that is enough to get all of the values that I need. So you really don't need to buy loads of supplies, but I do recommend having more than one pencil, especially if the only pencil you have is a very light one like a HB or a H pencil. That will not allow you to get in all of the darkest values. So just making that simple switch can really take your drawings to that next level. The next tip is to look at the relationships between the values. So don't just look at the value that you are trying to draw, but look at the values next to the area that you're working on. Are they lighter? Is it darker? And have you replicated those value relationships in your drawing? So it's always important to compare the value that you're trying to get in with the values around it to see if it all makes sense together, if all of those values are correct in relation to each other. And this will help you to notice if your value is too light or dark. Look at it and look at your reference. How light or dark is that value compared to the area next to it? And see if it's the same in your drawing. I've found that looking at value relationships makes it so much easier to judge if one value is correct. Rather than just looking at that one value, look at all of the values around it and are they all correct? So my final tip whilst you're drawing is to always keep looking back at your drawing and check each area for the accuracy of the values. Don't just check an area once and then leave it, because then you'll move on to areas around it and it may not be. Again, the relationship between those values may have changed when you darken up an area next to it. So always keep analysing your drawing and keep looking over areas that you've already done. And a great thing that I like to do is I like to take a photo of my drawing when I think I've finished and switch back and forth between the photo of my drawing and the photo of the reference and compare each area to see if I can notice any values that are drastically off. Okay, so to finish off, I just want to go through a couple of questions that you guys asked me on Instagram when it comes to values. And so the first one is, what if I go too dark? What can I do to fix that? So I always like to keep a stick eraser or a kneaded eraser on hand because they are really good at lifting up charcoal or graphite and to lighten up any values that have got a bit too dark. So you can use erasers to lighten up the values, or if you want a really subtle way just to lift up some charcoal or graphite just a little bit, you can use tissue. That works great, it's super cheap, and it's really an effective way to lighten up a value. The next question is, how do I know if I have gone too light or too dark? So like I said, if you use a value scale, that will really help you guys out. It's a very easy way to tell if your values are off. And it can be difficult to know if a value is wrong if all of your values around it are also inaccurate. So make sure to check all of your values. And the final question is, how do you get dark values with graphite? So personally, whenever I've used graphite, I haven't actually used graphite for the darkest values. I've never found that it's gotten dark enough for me. So instead, I like to use a charcoal pencil, or a black colored pencil works really well with graphite, surprisingly. And that's how I like to get in my dark values when I'm working with graphite. And so those are my tips for how you can improve your values in your drawings and take your drawings up to that next level. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your tips for creating more accurate values in your drawings. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new around here, and even tick that bell icon so you do get notified on my future videos. But that is it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everybody.